I used to believe that hell was merely a myth, a story for the weak, or something you read about in the Bible. I did, however, live it. I was stuck in it for the first 18 years of my life. What about the devil? His face was my brother's. The golden child was always Levi. My mother preferred to refer to him as the angel in her eyes. I was always perceived as the issue, while he cried and received attention. I was to blame for everything that broke or went wrong. He would have tantrums, smash his toys, and then I would be in front of the living room, screaming at him while he stood there wearing that phony expression of regret. He's just sensitive. You're older. Don't make a scene, my mother would say. One of the first times I recognized how horrible it was. I can still clearly recall. I turned 12 on that day. When my mother purchased this particular cake, I was ecstatic. It was meant to be flawless. But Levi wrecked it because it was his specialty. And my mother didn't inquire as to why I roared in exasperation. The cake and the work one had done to make the day feel significant were of no importance to her. You're a big girl now. Don't be so selfish. Your brother's still little. Mom yelled out in a voice that rang through the room as she struck me. I rapidly learnt to keep quiet. Levi's needs always came before mine. Always. He needed to be protected since he was the baby and the angel. The scapegoat was me. And for that, I detested him. I detested myself more, though, since I lacked the guts to defend myself. The situation simply got worse. I stopped talking to anyone about Levi's unrelenting cruelty when I was 13. I began to conceal things, my notebooks, my ideas, to escape the stuffy atmosphere in the house. I remained up late. The problem is that no one gave a damn. They couldn't see me. My father, well, he was never really there. He would pretend nothing was going on while he sat in front of the television. Ginger came next, my feline. It was the only species that gave me a sense of community. However, she was trapped inside the washing machine when I got home one day. She was scared, but alive. For weeks, she would avoid contact with everyone. Levi did it, and I knew it. I also let out a scream, as usual. However, my mother stood in front of him, seemingly protecting him from the reality, and took his side. Additionally, she threatened to send me to juvenile detention if I continued to scream that he was a monster. I didn't think anyone would defend me at that time. It was me who made the mistake. There was nothing Levi could do wrong. Nobody gave a damn, even after he ruined my school life by going out with my best friend, who obviously chose him over me. Not at all. Levi was flawless. I was just the strange elder sister that no one took notice of. But Levi wasn't the only one. I was also involved. I loathed myself the instant I discovered how much I disliked him. The worst part: if you won't take responsibility, then don't bother eating dinner, my mother replied as she stood in the center of the home, broom in hand. I was starving, and Levi was receiving extra food because he's still growing. That was the idea. I was finished. They're finished. I'm over being rejected all the time. That house wasn't for me. It wasn't a house at all. It was a jail. When life truly hit me, I was 28. Instead of the gradual suffocation I experienced as a youngster, it was a sudden and complete collapse. The pandemic caused the flower store where I had worked for 6 years to close. I had assumed it would only last a few weeks or perhaps a month. However, the weeks stretched into months. Then I received the email stating that my contract had been terminated. As simple as that. I had worked all of my adult life. Hard. I didn't have any backups or save, now that everything was crumbling. I found myself standing in a deserted apartment, while a refrigerator hummed, perhaps taunting me. I was left alone in a place I could no longer afford, when my roommate returned to Minnesota. When nothing is left to hold you, it's funny how easily everything falls apart. After selling everything else, I was left with only my old camper, the clothing on my back, and a few personal belongings. The camper became my only place to live, even though I had hoped it would be my escape, a small measure of independence. I gave my mother a call. Mom, may I use your driveway to park the camper for a short time? I simply need a spot to park it. I refused to enter. There is nowhere else for me to go. On the other end of the phone, I could hear her sigh. You're a grown-up now. Amelia, you cannot simply depend on us at all times. We're out of room. It won't cost you anything. Mom, only a small parking spot. Her chuckle was frigid and nasty. Is that piece of trash parked in our driveway? It will appear to the neighbors that we are hosting a homeless individual. Don't make me look foolish. I took a deep breath, my chest constricted. I simply hung up since I was unable to communicate. I sat in the silent apartment, clutching my car's steering wheel as if I were going to smash it. Nothing, however, needed to be crushed. There is nothing to alter. That's when Levi sent the SMS. A selfie of him smiling at the dinner table with his wife and children. A chalkboard in the background said, "Family dinner where people of value belong." I was having trouble breathing. My eyes were burning. "It appears that the camper will become your new best buddy. Congratulations," he wrote. That night, I parked in a Walmart lot, cuddled up in the camper, and closed the curtains as tight as I could to keep the outside world out. The embarrassment. However, could not be avoided. Even worse than the cold was the loneliness that weighed heavily on me. Never in my life have I felt so invisible. I couldn't sleep because of the howling wind outside, not because I was afraid, but rather because I was still feeling the effects of the years of neglect and rejection. I turned into a ghost, hopping from parking lot to parking lot, avoiding the indifferent world, and worse, avoiding the family who had decided I wasn't worth their attention. I acquired survival skills: how to charge my phone by plugging it into an outlet behind an old petrol station, how to take a shower at gyms that offer free trials. I had to move like a thief, in the shadows. I didn't tell anyone I was alive. I felt embarrassed. I was ashamed of my descent. I wasn't giving up, though. I was unable to. Then I came across the job posting one day. It was a modest warehouse assistant job that was tacked on the window of a print shop in the Wish suburbs. Low income. Work hard. However, it was a beginning. Wearing a jacket that had seen better days, I entered the room looking like someone who hadn't slept well in weeks. After giving me a quick rundown, the receptionist phoned the manager. I didn't give it much thought. I didn't give a damn. All I needed was work. I got hired 3 days later. It was a demanding job. Shifts of 10 hours. My legs felt like they were being crushed under the weight of the work, and my body screamed after every day. However, I didn't grumble. That was not something I had time for. I put forth more effort than I had ever done. The warehouse was cleaned by myself. I did some floor mopping. Whatever was broken, I fixed it. One night, after hours, I was spotted moving boxes by Mr. Paul, the warehouse supervisor. I told him the truth when he inquired what I was doing, concerning the camper. About how I was barely surviving while living behind a truck in a Walmart parking lot. He remained silent, simply nodded and left. He summoned me to the office the following day. I believed I was being let go, but I was wrong. After consulting with the director, he obtained permission to park my camper behind the warehouse. There was access to the staff restroom, power, and a security camera. I nearly burst into tears. I had a reliable parking space after that day. Electricity was available to me. I had a restroom. Although it wasn't much, it was more than I ever anticipated. I put in a lot of effort every day. I became proficient with the machines. I made notes about everything. I recommended changes. I gradually stopped being the girl in the back of the warehouse who couldn't be seen. I was spotted. I gained respect. I got promoted to team lead after 10 months. It was unbelievable to me. Suddenly, I was at last beginning to construct something for myself. I was on my way. Rebuilding and liberation. This subtle sensation of pride that suddenly crept in was not what I had anticipated. I had something that was mine for the first time, not taken, not borrowed, not offered out of duty or sympathy. I owned it. It was something I earned. The hard hours, the fatigue, and the warehouse job were all worthwhile. At night, I could sleep. I didn't wake up with concerns about how I would get through the day. I had a parking space. There was food in my refrigerator. Nevertheless, that object continued to loom over me. The family that I had abandoned, the people who continued to declare me useless, the people who expelled me from their lives as soon as I failed to live up to their expectations. My brother Dan gave me a call one Saturday night. Since the day I put my camper in the Walmart lot, I hadn't spoken to him. He said, "Hey, Amelia, in a voice full of sugary honey. I was considering. Perhaps you could move the camper for a bit and let us stay with you since you live alone in that house. I did not even hesitate. Are you serious? I asked incredulously, half laughing. In order for you and your family to take over, do you want me to leave my own home? No. However, he continued as if I hadn't said anything. It's not that big of a deal. Amelia, it's just a house. It's too big for one person. You don't need all that space. And, well, it's just so much more convenient for Dan with his work. It dawned on me then that they had never seen me. I sounded more composed than I actually was when I responded. No, this is my house. I owe you nothing, especially not this. You're living alone. 3 bedrooms is a waste. Dan's family is cramped at home. You used to live in the camper. Why not let them stay in the house for a bit? My mother said, her voice gentle and almost beautiful in its manipulation. They were treating me as though I had no option but to bend. But I couldn't, and wouldn't. I felt as though the walls were closing in on me, making it difficult for me to breathe. This is my house. I worked for this. I don't have to share it with you, I said as I got up. What's the difference? You've lived like that before. You were fine, said Syl, Dan's wife, with a tight smile that seemed to be attempting to force something out of me. You people are insane. You think I'm going to give up my house for you? After everything, I said, unable to control myself, as I walked toward her with quivering hands. You're selfish. Amelia, you weren't there when we needed you. Now you have everything, and you won't share, she said, crossing her arms and grinning as if she had won. I'm not sure what it was, but something inside of me snapped. You turned me away when I needed you. You laughed at me. You called me a failure. Now you think I should just give up everything, I yelled, recalling the years of being little and allowing them to push me down. It breaks my heart to see you so cold. Can't you just help your family? Just a little, my mother, who usually cries for Dan, begged to act. Soft, shaky voice, fake tears. They had taken everything from me, including my value and position in the world, and now they believed they could take my house. I couldn't tolerate it. I felt like I was suffocating. You used to tell me I was a burden, I said to my father, who had been standing there, silent as usual. I used to feel insignificant around you. I meant to give you everything now. Syl lifted a hand and lunged at me. My head rang as I staggered back from the force of the slap. Even the sting of my face had gone away. I had too much anger and defiance in my heart. I took my phone out of my pocket and pressed the record button. I couldn't allow them to lie to me, once more. Not now. Not with my evidence, I said in a chilly, disinterested tone. I'll call the police if you don't leave my house in 5 minutes. It wasn't dread that made my palms shake. Power was the issue. There was silence in the room. Nobody dared to speak for the first time. I gave my mother one final glance. You once claimed that I was a burden. I meant to. Be your bank now. My mom was removed from the house by my dad for the first time. Dan appeared to be about to speak, but he held back. Angrily, he simply shook his head and turned to go. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was about to fall apart as I stood there with the door closing behind them. I felt powerful. I sensed free. I posted the video to social media that evening. I demonstrated to the globe. No more quiet, no more hiding. Now this was my tale. Furthermore, they would never again take it from me. My phone was overflowing with messages by the time the video had been shared a couple hundred times. It was more than simply rage. It was more than just assistance. For the first time, I could hear my voice. It was also pleasant. It wasn't over, though. It wouldn't be. I knew. The repercussions I expected to feel relieved, but the fallout hit me hard. The days that followed were a haze of phone conversations, messages, and attempts to take sides. Even folks I hadn't spoken to in years had opinions. Messages flooded my inbox, some encouraging, some critical, and others downright derisive. However, my cousin Lisa's reply was the one that caught my attention. She posted, I just watched the video. I'm shaking with anger. You did the right thing. We all saw how they treated you. I've always known you were stronger than they gave you credit for. It was the first time I had been seen in a long time. actually noticed me. Additionally, I didn't feel like I was fading into the background for the first time. Of course, though, there was my mother. She made her own public post the day after I uploaded the video. The typical showmanship. I'm heartbroken that my daughter would shame her family over a small misunderstanding. We were only trying to help her brother. He's a hard-working man with kids, and Amelia can't even share her space with him. She was so out of touch that I nearly burst out laughing. A minor miscommunication. She didn't know what it was like to feel insignificant all my life, to be the person they didn't notice or care about until it was convenient for them. The way she misrepresented the facts was the worst. For that, she had a present. She didn't care about the things I had battled for, or the times I had struggled to keep safe. She didn't even give a damn. It was evident in what she said. She wasn't depressed. She had no regrets. All she was doing was attempting to look good. I didn't participate. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The video was self-explanatory. Then the surprise arrived. It wasn't my mother, nor was it from my father. Uncle Matthew sent it, the one who had never been close, the one who stayed out of the family drama, the one who kept his thoughts to himself and used to nod courteously at family get-togethers. His message appeared while I was seated at my kitchen table, gazing at my phone's screen. Amelia, I witnessed everything. Simply say yes if you require legal assistance. I am aware of some excellent ones. I almost choked. I was surprised that he contacted me. I had no idea he was concerned. I replied back. I didn't think you'd take my side. You've avoided this mess all your life, he answered right away. I was mistaken. I didn't say anything long enough. But I can't this time. I didn't respond right away. I gave the words time to register. I had an option. This is something I could fight for everything they had attempted to take, not just for me. I was no longer in need of their approval. I had spent years trying to win over my family, and I didn't need to prove myself to them. The months that followed were a peculiar combination of loneliness and triumph. Dan didn't answer. He didn't say sorry. He made no effort to make things better. He simply remained silent, as if the person I used to know was gone in the midst of it all. Sil Tad vanished. She vanished into the shadows after deleting all of her social media accounts. The next surprise, however, arrived. A U-Haul truck was parked outside my house. As I opened the front door one morning to retrieve the mail, Dan was at the front door, fumbling to move a couch in the direction of the door. Sil was standing in the yard with her arms folded, staring at me with a familiar expression, like I was a piece of property. She was assessing me. My eyes were unbelievable. Why in the world are you here? With my heart racing, I yelled. Dan didn't blink. Amelia, we're moving in. This house is too large for one person, as you are aware. I tried to take it all in as I looked at him. Did he really want to live in my home? With a fake sweetness in her voice, Sil took a step forward. Exactly. It makes sense because you live alone. In addition, Dan finds it quite convenient for his work. No, even though my hands were shaking, I said. This is my house. In a firm voice. This is what I labored for. You can't just come in here and take over. Dan seems unfazed. Amelia, you're self-centered. You were nowhere to be found when we needed you. You won't give back now that you have something. I froze, feeling angry. You laughed in my face when I needed you, when I pleaded with you to let me in. I was considered a failure by you. Do you now believe that I should give you everything? Dan shrugged, as if this were the ordinary. However, Sil. She was unique. Her hand rose with the same ferocity I had witnessed so many times before as she lunged at me. She struck me in the face. I staggered back, a mix of anger and incredulity tightening my chest. This time, though, I wasn't going to let her win. With my hands shaking but my resolve unwavering, I took my phone out of my pocket and pressed record. I said, sounding colder than I imagined I could. I'm calling the police if you don't leave my house right now. Sil's face contorted in rage, but she dared not move. The tension between us was high as I continued to record. Dan's face flushed, but he remained silent. Soon later, the police showed up. I showed them the fake lease, the texts, the video. Dan waved the document in my face, and the policeman shook his head while holding it up. Isn't this your signature? No. I firmly answered. That is a fake. There was no argument between them. Dan and Sil were asked to leave right away by the officer. As they packed the vehicle and their plans fell apart in front of, I experienced a strange sense of joy. Deflated, they left my property. My face was still burning from Sil's smack when I sat in my living room that evening. But I was also experiencing another sensation. Freedom was something I hadn't experienced in years. This is what I had fought for. I had no intention of losing it, maintaining my position. After the police arrived, the days were calm. Initially, it seemed as though nothing had changed. Even though I had my house back, I was still burdened by everything. It was still there, the smack, the manipulation, the way they all attempted to put me down. However, I had gained knowledge that day. I refused to remain silent any longer. The house wasn't the only thing. Their desire to take away my space wasn't the only thing at stake. It was about being made to feel insignificant for so many years. Years of allowing them to manipulate me. I had finished it. The weeks that followed were a haze of everyday existence. Even so, I got up early, worked hard, and took care of my garden. I didn't require anybody's blessing. I had discovered that at last. Then one afternoon, I discovered a message on my phone when I got home. Dan sent it. Amelia, I'm sorry for everything I did. I didn't mean to hurt you. I wasn't a good brother. I see that now. I know I can't make up for what happened, but I'm sorry. I gazed at the screen, attempting to determine how to use it. I didn't anticipate an apology. Not from him, not after everything. My initial reaction was to disregard it. But then I came to a realization. Even though it was so late, this apology wasn't for me. It was for him. I didn't answer. Not quite yet. Perhaps never. He apologized for his own guilt, not for any sense of closure. Furthermore, I refused to carry that for him. Things didn't start to change much until the next week. My mother's younger sister, my aunt, sent me another message. She had never quite fit in with my family's manipulating and had always maintained her distance. When she wrote, I saw everything. Amelia, if you need a lawyer, let me know. I've got connections. I should have spoken up sooner. I'm sorry for staying silent for so long. You did the right thing. I nearly burst into tears. I didn't think any of my relatives would defend me. However, she did. And it was crucial. As the months passed, life began to truly feel like mine. Every day I was the last person to leave the warehouse and the first person in. Although it wasn't a glamorous profession, I gained practical experience. I began learning new things, assuming greater responsibility, and challenging myself. It was mine, even though it was difficult. I merited it. I even got myself a brand new automobile. Nothing special, but mine. It was the first vehicle I could really claim as my own. After that, I received a call from the bank one day. The house loan had been accepted. This was my first true home, with no family support or handouts, just me. That night, when I parked in the driveway, I gazed at the house and let it to sink in. It was more than just a residence. It represented all of the things I had battled for. I had to rebuild everything from scratch. However, the house wasn't the only factor. It was about the next step. I was rebuilding a family for myself, and that was the focus. Not the one who laughed in my face when I asked for assistance, or the one who had thrown me out. However, I was making one from the folks who actually saw me. I rented out my house's spare rooms a few months later. I extended an invitation to Laura and Emily, my two closest friends, to move in. They had both had hardships of their own, and we soon became our own small family. We would watch movies together, laugh till we were out of breath, and create memories that I would cherish. I wasn't considered a burden by them. They didn't act as though I had to sacrifice everything for their comfort. They considered me a human being. I began to think I was one too. Then my mother called one night. She hadn't been in touch with me for months before. She was courteous. She was tender. Amelia, I've been thinking a lot. I'm sorry for everything. We were wrong. We spoiled Dan. We made you feel like you didn't matter. I was selfish. And I see that now. I was unsure of how to react. I was unsure of my ability to forgive her. Not quite yet. However, I paid attention. She was listening to me for the first time. And for the moment, that was plenty. After a week, My father arrived. He didn't say anything, not the same. His eyes had lost some of their acuity. He appeared unsure of his right to be there as he stood in my doorway and looked at me. We were mistaken, he remarked quietly. That was not how we ought to have treated you. You were worthy of better. Everything you've worked for is yours, and you deserve it. I was unsure if it was genuine. I wasn't sure if I could trust them. However, they had admitted it, and it was the beginning. Dan texted me once again the following day. This time, there will be no apology, just the straightforward statement. I see what you did. You've changed. I see that now. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Then it took place. One afternoon, a Facebook notice buzzed across my phone. It was my mother's post. She was pleading for mercy and presenting everything as a miscommunication. We were just trying to help. We never meant to hurt you, she replied. This time, I didn't care that it was a lie. I uploaded the video, the one when they had come to my residence and demanded that I leave, the one in which Syl gave me a face slap, the one in which they all attempted to rob me of everything. And I experienced an emotion I hadn't felt in years when my post went viral. Not confirmation, not triumph, just tranquility. There was the truth. They were unable to retract it. I didn't feel like it was ended, though. Even then, I was aware that the worst was still to come. The storm was still coming. I knew. Then it did. When I opened the door one morning, Syl was standing there with an envelope in her hand. Dan's penmanship was recognizable. Without even glancing at me, she handed me the letter and stated, Dan wants to talk. I didn't open the mail, but I did look at it for a while. I didn't have to. I was aware of it, and I came to a realization for the first time in my life. They weren't necessary for me. No more. I didn't require their excuses, sympathy, or endorsement. I was stronger because I had created a life without them.